Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Oh, after a bad start to the day, previous video. Well, it's not really a bad start, just a not quite right, shall we call it. Mistake on my part, they happen. It looks like we're going to have some sunshine today, so it's going to warm up in here eventually. And that makes life a bit difficult for me. I've got a lot of watering to do today, and obviously when it starts getting warmer in here I need this big circulating fan, and although it's of my own doing, that becomes a problem because I'm standing right in front of it and it keeps blowing my hair in under my glasses and in my eyes, and it annoys me. Sometimes I talk about it. Well, the problem is I've usually got wet hands, so trying to deal with that, it's just a nuisance. It's much easier watering when the fans are off. But I'm going to have to change everything round today. I'm getting the things that get dunked in the bucket, I'm getting them out of the way now. I don't usually do those first, but I need to get them out the way because I'm quite low on RO water and I've got quite a lot of watering to do, so I know I'm going to run out. So the idea is to get the bucket used and then get that outside and put the RO unit on and start getting some water going. And I always use the Vander bucket as the storage thing for the RO water, and then I use a jug to take the water out of there and pour it into the containers. It's just the easiest way to do it, and it's so big that even if I forget it for a while, it very rarely fills up and overflows and wastes the water. Now obviously the water I produce today will be freezing cold. It's not too much above freezing outside today, and you should never get an RO membrane cold. It doesn't do them any good, because the membranes are so fine. I mean, that's really how a frost forms. You get a frost even though it's not, it could only be 3 or 4 degrees and you get a frost, and it's because the layer of water that freezes and forms the frost is so fine it's capable of freezing at that temperature. So you've got to watch your membranes, don't get them chilled because they can damage. Literally water expands when it freezes and it can damage the membrane. But the fact is I'll take it outside and turn it on straight away so it'll have a constant flow of water at the temperature that the utility water is, which is that'll keep it fine, and then I can get some water on the go, and as and when it's ready I can sort of warm it up artificially and then crack on with some watering. But I want to get the bucket outside with the RO unit as soon as possible because I'm going to run out of water otherwise. While I'm here, in one of Ed's videos, he had some blooms on his Dendrobium Hancockii. Well, I'm not sure whether it was his plant or his lady friend's plant, but there were blooms. And I've just watched another video, I can't remember whose it was, Denise Noak, I think, but she's got one of these as well and was discussing whether a shoot was actually a bud or one of the branches, and I'm pretty confident that was a bud as well. So there's some people around that have got buds and blooms on this thing, so I'm seriously keeping my eye on mine. I mean, that is a large mature plant, so it's capable of blooming. But whether it's had the right conditions since I got it to trigger those blooms, that I don't know yet. But there's certainly enough types of canes on here. There's much older canes. I mean, these are old bloom spikes on here, so it has bloomed, and it does look like it blooms on the older part of the cane behind where the branches are, or in between where the branches are. It doesn't look like it blooms on like these growths, the new growths. But I'll keep my eye on that. I've got a feeling we might see some bud spikes on that soon. That will be nice. Somebody asked a while ago, I think it was, how my Brassivola nodosa was actually doing because it had spikes pushing on and some little buds forming. Well, both spikes seems to be doing okay. There were 3. There was a spike trying to grow on this older growth. Well, I think that one's aborted, but the other 2 are pushing on. Now this one's going to be subject to thoughts. I need to get the blooming over first, but most other people that I've seen that have got really good Brassivolas growing like good uns are in pots. and this one's effectively bare root mounted, and I don't think I can hydrate it enough. I'm also a trifle worried that some of the newer roots have stopped growing, but yeah, I think this one needs a little bit of thought. There is a possibility that this has got a touch of the dreaded F in it. Now, it could have had it in there for some time, and because it was looking okay and the new growths were pushing on, and so were the roots, it might have missed the regular treatments. But it doesn't seem to be growing as well as it ought to be doing. Nonetheless, it's blooming. So we get the blooms out of the way first. I mean, the buds are pushing on nicely. So we'll get those. They're not huge, long-lasting. Well, they are quite large. They're not long-lasting blooms. So I've probably only got 5, maybe 6 weeks to wait. By then, we'll be into March, and so certainly either during or following the new blooms is the point where the new growths are going to start. So it would be a good time to think about getting it off that mount and getting it in. It can go in one of the holy clay pots, one of my new ones, because I've got spares now. So I think it might do better in a pot, you know, with some perhaps medium and large bark mixed, as long as it doesn't all fall out the holes, and see if it'll do better that way. You know, I always say if your plant's doing great, well, leave it alone. It's not broke, don't fix it. But this one isn't. It's not doing as well as it should be. Now, that's partly my fault, because I did drop it flat on its face and break the last 2 strong new growths off. And it had to start again farther back up the rhizome, which it did. And those growths are now blooming, or coming into bloom soon. So, you know, I didn't lose the plant completely, but that must have set it back quite dramatically. It would have put all the energy into those new growths, and they were pushing on really well, and they both got snapped off abruptly. So it had to sort of start again, really at the wrong time of year. So, yeah, it did get set back, and I wasn't expecting it to bloom on these growths, I must admit. But I'm going to try that one in a pot. Decision made. When we get the blooms over, we'll try that one in one of the holy clay pots, see if it pushes out more new growths, because it's not pushing out the number of new growths that I've seen on other plants. So it's that business of the sort of judging rules. Is it doing as well as it ought to be for that type of the plant? And the simple answer is no, it's not. So we'll try something different for that one. But we should get some blooms soon. Another user request. Somebody asked how my zygos are doing. That's a sea of green. Something I never expected to see. My past record on these is atrocious. But I do have 3 now. One's quite new. And they're all okay. I can't say whether they're bursting with health or anything, because I've never kept one long enough to find out. But they're all doing something. The new one here, that's on the repotting list because it's in something unknown. But I mean, that's got a nice new growth coming. That's not going to be a spike, it's in the wrong place. That's a new growth. And I've just noticed today, it's actually got another one coming there. So that's a no ID. That was just bought for the blooms basically and the fragrance, which it did very well. So that one's okay. I'll probably ruin it by repotting it, but it's going to get done one way or the other, because I don't know what it's in. And the ones that I have repotted in known stuff are now doing okay. So I think I've got the mix right at long last, because that's part of the problem, is not growing them in the right sort of environment for what they actually are. Now this one was got during last year. It's never bloomed. It's called Arta Ellie, and it's the named variety Stonehurst, and it was actually awarded by the RHS, or one of the plants was, not this one. But the new growth it had when I got it has pushed on, and still is pushing on. So it's doing something. That's all it's doing at the moment, but it ain't dead yet, and it's got green leaves everywhere apart from the leafless bulbs right at the back. So coming on, that's that one. And then this one I've had a while. This was in full bloom when I got it. It hasn't bloomed since, but it's doing something. We've got something big growing out here, which, given its profile, it's thin and wide. Well, thin and wide to me normally says growth, not spike. Spikes tend to be rounded. If you think what the spike looks like when it's finished and it's in bloom, it's not flat, it's rounded with the buds coming off. So that's highly likely to be a new growth, which is good. That's on top of the new growth it had. It's also got another nice big new growth coming there, same logic. And it's got this one round the back that has been sat there like that, doing nothing for some considerable time. So I don't know whether that's just stalled and will never grow. But I have got two good new growths, and this one's pushed out a lot of roots at the base of the plant down into the pot. So yeah, coming on. Could be a way off blooming again though, if these two growths have got to get to the point where they bloom. And I say that because some zygos push their spikes out well before the growths are mature, and some later, you know, when the growths are almost or even mature. And the fact that this was in bloom when I got it, I don't know that yet, not for this one. But that one has got no tag. Rats! Oh, Rose is going to kill me. So I will go and do a tag for that one now, because I know what the other two are. So this is the other one, if you see what I mean. So in my notes, it's got a name. I think it's the Louisendorf. So I'll go and get a tag done for that. So yeah, so that's my three zygos. They're all okay, you know, which is a first. There we go, just to show I'm not making it up. I am progressing round the non-tagged plants as I go, and eventually I will go round replacing Mankey tags and tags of assorted and various colours and sizes, so that I get a nice consistent white tag with black writing on. It just shows up so much better than like on the dark green and the red and stuff like that. So that's one done. I've got a quick repair job to do on this bulbophyllum. When it pushed out its new growth, which effectively would have been totally aerial and hanging out the side of the pot, I managed to bend it round into the centre of the pot. So any new growths that come off of that new growth will now be in the pot. But I put this skewer across there to hold the rhizome down, hoping that the roots would get into the media. Well, they seem to be sort of stalling just above the media, so a little trick coming up now, but I need two hands. Right, so you can see what I've done. I've just put a little piece of sponge under the skewer, which puts gentle pressure onto that rhizome without like damaging it or bending it with something stiff. So it's just gently pushing it down, which has got this growth much nearer the media now. And I just pulled up a little bit of the media from round the side of the pot that isn't really doing much, and placed it gently round those roots. So that should now start those roots getting down into the pot, and we'll see what happens. I forget what that one is, but it hasn't bloomed. Crassipes, that is, from Archie, and he wasn't sure whether that really was what it was called, so it's got a question mark on the tag. It's also got a green tag. I think I might do that one now. Even kikis can do daft things, really. This is Dendrobium Spring Dreamer pollen, and it was a kiki in quite a bad way when it arrived. Rachel just tucked it in the box with the polyclay pots when we organised that. I think it was only a single cane when I got it. Well, it's decided to bloom. I ought to take those blooms off really and put the strength into the plant, but I think it's got a good root system on it now. I think this year that's going to push up quite a few new canes. So we'll let it run. As I say, it's only a couple of blooms squashed in between two canes, and there's a couple more buds up here to come on that cane. I mean, that was a good growth to get from a kiki, you know. You have to bear in mind that's what it looks like, you know, when the canes grow. So it's a long way behind, but yeah, I mean, at least it grew some roots and pushed up a couple of growths, and that will pull on quite nicely during this growing season, I expect, and then I'll have a second one of those. Quite honestly, this one might get so tatty that this one may end up replacing it. You never know. I mean, this one has only got, what has it got? 1, 2, 3, 3 good canes and more canes that are not going to bloom again. So it's starting to get to that tatty phase where you get more old canes than new canes. Now I can tidy that up, obviously, it's a strong plant, but yeah, there comes a point with the Nobly hybrids that, you know, you start getting more older canes than new ones. Now in an ideal world you get more new canes each time, but the number of old canes is still cumulative. Unless you take some off, they'll just stay there, you know. And even if you've got 5 new growths, if you've got 10 old canes, it still looks a bit tatty. So that one's due for a tidy up. Somebody asked how the mounted Brassia was doing. Very well, actually. New growth is a good one. I think that's going to be considerably larger than the previous one, and the previous one bloomed and it had a good spike for such a young plant. The latest growth is bigger, leaf is larger, extension is larger, pushing out some good new roots. Some are attaching to the mount, some are aerial, some are getting down in the moss. So this one's going to become part of a new regime for the mounted orchids. Come the better season, I'm going to get a second bucket, because obviously we're talking different feed levels, but yeah, there's a lot of the mounts are just going to get thrown in a bucket. Basically, literally, the whole plant. Just chuck it in the bucket and let it fully hydrate. Because with the sort of heat I get in here and the day lengths and things, just pouring water over them will hydrate them, but then that's it. You know, they're going to dry pretty quick, so they may not take in the full amount of hydration they could do with. So by giving them a good soak, you know, leaves, stalks, roots, mount, the whole flipping lot, that's about as much hydration as I can do, and I'm going to try that when the season gets better. I mean, we're not there yet. I mean, this one decided to push its new growth up through the winter, so for a winter growth, that's pretty good. It's pushing on nicely. I would like to see 2 spikes on that new growth, but it may be that its makeup will only lend itself to 1 spike. But it should be a longer spike with more blooms, even if it is only 1. That's Chieftain Ludslow's. You can see the parents on the label. What have we got? Arquigera and Vericosa. Vericosa I know quite well, the other one I don't. But that's the parentage, and it's pushing on well. Okay, I'm halfway through watering, and I've made my mind up. This is the last day. That full sun's going to get on those lower shelves, so the shade netting's coming out. I'm going to risk it today simply because I've got a lot to do. I'm multitasking here. I'm doing washing. My fogger's empty, that needs filling up, and I've got nothing to fill it up with. The RO unit's on the go. I'm starting to fill up my containers, and I'm still in the middle of watering. But we've got all the big guns out today. I've got the extractor running, that's going to pull out some of the hot air, but I haven't got the inlet fan running to let the cool air in, because that's cold air. You know, I mean, outside, even though the sun's out, it's still only about 7-8 degrees, maybe 9. I don't want that blast of icy air coming into the grow room. So at the moment it's sucking the air out of the house, which at least is down sort of 21 degrees C. So it's cooler air than what's in here at the moment, which has just got up to nearly 29. Yeah, and it's dropped my humidity, and the fogger's shut down because it's run out of water. So the first lot of RO water's going in there. So to get the humidity back up again. I can't have heat without humidity. So it's all getting a bit much out here at the moment. So we'll have to get at it, won't we? Right, that's it. That's the last of the RO water. That's a CalMag feed in there, low level TDS 80. And I will see how far around the rest of the pots I get with that until I run out, and then I'll pick up again tomorrow. As I say, this time of year it's not too much of a big deal. So I'll just go round. I haven't got that far today because of filming. Yep, you can all carry some blame. Only joking. But the fact that I've done the non-resting mounts, you know, they take time to get down. I have to be very careful getting them down, or I knock stuff over because of the long canes and leaning over stuff. and then I watered all the mounts, and then I've watered this lot down through here, and that's the amount of water I've got left. So I think actually I'll come over here now and get that top shelf done and that lower shelf there, and the cooler growers down there, they were watered not that long ago, so they can wait till tomorrow, they're fine. And if I've still got a bit of water left, I can move over to here and then pick it up again tomorrow. So we'll see how we go. Now I'll just finish off today. I've probably filmed enough for 3 or 4 videos today as separate entities and bits and bobs to put together. So tomorrow, in theory, I don't need to film unless I see any drastic changes as I go round. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for dropping by.